Sir, phone for you, said one of the circuit house menials at about 6 one evening to him as he was sitting in the veranda with Marcus Aurelius. It was Mahindra Bhatia from the forest colony. Hello, Mandy. Of course I remember you. Yes, must be 3 years since we last. Yes, Sati told me too about you. I was planning to ring you up, but you know how it is. New place, new job, and busy the whole day. Sure, we must meet. What about this evening? Yes, this evening. I'm free right now. Got off early today. Yes, you come over because I really don't know this town well enough yet. It's the fourth room in the rest house in the circuit house compound. Oh, I came here about 3 weeks ago, I think. Yes, it is very different. Whatever would they talk about when they met? They would have to drink together, otherwise the evening would be intolerable. Listen, Mandy, why don't we drink this evening? Otherwise, great, just bring that bottle along. Okay, in half an hour. Bye. Despite the promises of whiskey, Agastya returned to the veranda not overly excited about Bhatia. He had been of a completely different set in the college days, a student of physics or chemistry, he had forgotten which, who had been, in Dhrubo's lingo, just one more urban Indian bewitched by America's hard sell in the third world. Bhatia liked t-shirts and Calvin Klein jeans, Delhi's fast food joints, Indian motorcycles, because he couldn't afford a foreign one, girlfriends whom he could lay any time, man. They proved elusive. Marijuana, even a little cocaine, the singers who won the Grammy Awards and whom Indian TV for his ecstasy had begun finally to show, calling rupees bucks and being called Mandy. His ambition had been to go abroad, to the US of A, perhaps to show it how well he fitted in with its lifestyle. Dhrubo had once said that they had been sitting on the college front lawn, stoned, and Bhatia had passed by with some clones, 2 headphones and a Walkman, witheringly. He's the sort who'd love to get AIDS just because it's raging in America. Instead, Bhatia had won Madna. Agastya found it delightful. Agastya was even happier to see that the 3 years and Madna probably had subdued Bhatia. His clothes hadn't changed, Gloria Vanderbilt and a t-shirt that said, "I don't want no Star Wars." He meets the district inspector of land records in these clothes, and Agastya laughed silently. But he was thinner, cleaner, and more somber. Perhaps the job made him shave every day. His whiskey, unfortunately, was only half a bottle. Hello. They shook hands. They sat in the veranda. Agastya didn't want to sit in his room because visitors there looked incongruous. The room was really for the musings of the lonely. Well, they eventually got a little drunk, enough for Bhatia to relapse into invective. He forgot that he and Agastya had been merely acquaintances in college. Perhaps he remembered and didn't care, or perhaps to him it was enough that Agastya came from his old life and would consequently understand. Bhatia ranted against his job, the small town, the people, the boredom, the loneliness, the absence of sex. These cries of despair from inarticulate mouth embarrassed Agastya profoundly. He would never have accepted that he and Bhatia could have anything in common, but now they probably did. Their dislocation. It's sick. There's no one to talk to, no place to go, nothing to do. Just come back to your room after office, get drunk, feel lonely, and jerk off. Bhatia made Agastya's secret life seem so ridiculous. He wanted to laugh. Its major consolation had been the possibility that it was a profound experience, something rare. Now it seemed as common as a half bottle of whiskey, something he shared with Bhatia. Agastya faintly disliked him for this, for shattering one of his last consoling illusions. But he could not admit to their similarity. He realized obscurely that the sense of loneliness was too precious to be shared, and finally incommunicable, that men were ultimately islands, each had his own universe, immensely only to himself, far beyond the grasp or the interest of others. For them, the pettiness of the ordeal was unrecordable, worthy at best only of a flicker of empathy. He was not really interested in Bhatia's life later. Later, Drupal would not be interested in his, and his father would not be able to understand it. It was pleasant, however, to hear Bhatia and to contradict gently and further incense him. Time passed that way. But Mandy, all jobs are boring, and life for everyone is generally unhappy. You can't blame Madna. Maybe you should get married. Then at least you can solve two problems: sex and loneliness. Agastya soon began enjoying his facile and shallow only because they were worn out, arguments. And I think whenever anyone shifts to a new place, initially he does feel a little weird. Here Bhatia interrupted him. What initially? I've been here for more than a year. But the world isn't a wonderful place full of exciting opportunities. It's generally dull and fucked everywhere. You just have to settle down unless you want to commit suicide. Lots of people do, you know. Agastya rather liked his new theme. There are many indigenous methods of suicide. You could change sex, kill your husband if he doesn't die on his own, and burn yourself on his pyre. But I think Suti to you, is prohibited. They've killed a great Indian tradition, but there's a new one in its place. You could change sex and marry and get your husband to burn you. The ultimate kink experience. Agastya finished his third drink and felt the whiskey go down more sideways and attack his liver. Bhatia hadn't been listening, was staring at the bottom of his glass. What, Mandy? Do you feel like a rider of ghazals over his empty glass? No, there's some black thing at the bottom. It looks like rat shit. Have a look. Yes, it does look like rat shit. Agastya handed back the glass quickly. Vasant, that insane man you saw, got the glasses from that cupboard in the circuit house dining room. Have you seen that cupboard? A huge bugger. A tiger could stay inside and no one would know. I thought the glasses were clean. The rat shit doesn't show through this green glass. Bhatia held the glass up against the veranda tube light. Agastya remembered a restaurant in Calcutta whose pizzas Neera loved, where the bulb shades were green bottles. What can I get with dissolved rat shit? Asked Bhatia. Plague? Don't be silly. That's extinct. Extinct? Is that the right word for diseases? Nothing else, I think. It was stale rat shit, wasn't it? How do I know? Asked Bhatia irritably. Who else will? You drank it. To which Bhatia said nothing but mused over the catastrophes to come. Then the electricity went off. Complete darkness and shouts of joy from the servants' quarters behind the circuit house. That's probably Vasant's children, happy at not having to do homework. Now they can even play I Spice. It was nice to see nothing, to feel the faint breeze, and to talk about ordinary matters to the dark. The electricity supply is really bad here. They'll begin soon shutting it off regularly in the hottest parts of the day. Can you get a light from somewhere? There's the last drink left in that bottle. Agastya got a candle and placed it on the Madna district gazetteer. He looked at the book affectionately. This fat book's nice, as a paperweight, for placing candles on. You should open it sometime. It's quite interesting. Agastya was surprised. He would never have thought that there were any facets to Bhatia. Bhatia lit a cigarette from the candle and touched the gazetteer. From the office? Everyone treats government stuff like this. Really valuable stuff sometimes. Furniture, old houses, old books, all treated like this, for keeping candles on. I think it's going to be plague. Are your armpits swelling? The lights came on again. Again the shouts of joy from the children. Perhaps they're happy that the lights came on because it gives them a chance to shriek. What shall we do for dinner? I suggest we walk out and get another half bottle and stooge a dinner off Sati. That evening, Agastya saw a little of Madna at close quarters. Bhatia wanted a rickshaw, Agastya wanted to walk. They took a rickshaw part of the way. They jolted in their seats and watched the calf muscles of the rickshaw wala. He smelt of a decade of sweat and malnutrition. They passed garages, stalls selling sugarcane juice, shops. Just notice the number of chemists in Madna, said Bhatia bitterly. A clear sign how unhealthy this place is. 8 o'clock, but this place is far more alive than South Delhi is at 6 in the evening. Crowds on the road, the rickshawwala using both his bell and his hoarse voice against them, the smell of dosas and frying fish from a dhaba, and urine and mud from a police station, a transitor from a sugarcane stall deafening its surroundings with a hidden Hindi film disco song, softer pseudo-ghazals from a music shop, the darkness of passing alleys. It wouldn't be too boring to get stoned and hang around here and watch all this. Impossible. Madna is just too small. Your official life would get to you. Some turd from the office will see you and talk to you, and it'd soon be all over the town, all over the offices anyway, that this young westernized type from Delhi just hangs around the bazaars. They'd disapprove. Your collector would anyway. They met Joshi the RDC almost immediately when they were arguing with the rickshawwala over prices. Hello, Sensar. What are you doing here? He was with what looked like his wife, but he didn't introduce her. Be charitable, said Agastya to himself. Maybe she's his mistress. Maybe he has a harem of tribal women and dances naked with them every evening before dinner. Hello, Joshi Sab. This is my friend Mahindra. He's an assistant conservator of forests here. Mr. Joshi's at the collector. He's RDC. And I still don't know what that is, he added silently. They parted after inanities. Bhatia said, Now you wait and see. In a few days, someone completely unrelated to Joshi will say to you something stupid like, So you go for walks to the bazaar in the evenings. You wait and see. 3 evenings later, Mrs. Shrivastava said, I heard, August, that you get drunk and walk around every day in the market with some forester friends. To which Shrivastava scowled and added, Sen, you must be careful of the company you keep in Madna. A small place, people talk a lot. They don't have much else to do. You be careful of people like that Govind Sati, a scoundrel, a cartoonist. As an IAS officer, you can't mix with everybody. It's not a job where what you do after office is entirely your own private business. You're also responsible to government in the after hours. And that Govind Sati, a really irresponsible type, thinks life is a big joke. Bhatia and Agastya turned down an alley. Under the tube light at the corner, Bhatia nearly put his foot into a huge pile of fresh dung. Watch it. In the light, the dung looked black-green with small bubbles, reminding Agastya of Vasant's spinach. Probably tastes better, he thought. Did cows normally shit like that, or had the waters of Madna ruined them too? Or maybe this one had also eaten at the rest house. On either side, small, ugly houses, old and unpainted. Here in the alleys there seemed no one to clamor for beauty. Barred windows, a room with blue walls, a boy in a vest-on bed, studying under a tube light. Madna had its life too. Mandy, those are sculptures, aren't they? Agastya pointed to a house. On the ledges on either side of the main steps sat 2 white goats, absolutely immobile. They don't smell like sculptures, said Bhatia, but in the light and dark of the alley they could have been statues in white marble, probably sleeping or just stoned. Weren't white goats a good omen in Hindu myths somewhere? Agastya couldn't make the effort to scan his mind for the illusion, but he felt better just looking at them, so absurd and attractive as though placidly waiting to welcome guests. A blaze of light around a corner, a board depicting grotesquely disproportionate Bharatanatyam dancer and saying, "Welcome to Dakshin Bar and Restaurant." Bhatia said, "You order some pakoras here. We'll need them for the booze. I'll go and get it. The shop is just down the road. We'll save time." Agastya entered the restaurant, wondering why Bhatia wanted to save time. Dakshin was huge, noisy, and brightly lit. He sat nearest the door, facing the courtyard of rickshaws and scooters. He didn't want to be recognized, didn't want this world to be linked to the collectorate. The speakers near the ceiling boomed out Hindi disco songs. He felt even better. At the next table, a man with half his face altered by leukoderma gobbled up idlis from a sea of sambar. Agastya smiled at him. "Even my face should be like yours," he thought. "My mother was fair and Christian," and then felt ashamed of himself. A Sikh entered, fat and powerful in tight jeans and a t-shirt stretched across his huge, firm breasts. He looked around murderously with mean red eyes. A small beaked nose, thin lips, thin beard. "I'd love to get to know this guy," thought Agastya. "He epitomizes vice." The Sikh scratched his balls and left on a noisy motorbike. Agastya thought of the reactions if he took the Sikh to the collector's house for dinner, roaring up the drive on his motorcycle and introducing him to Shrivistav. "Sir, this is my best friend, almost my other half." Bhatia arrived with a packet, looking conspiratorial. At Sati's hotel, the rickshawwala said, "4 rupees." Bhatia said, "Rubbish, 2." They argued for a while, lazily, almost perfunctorily. In the middle, Bhatia turned to Agastya. "On principle, man. One always argues with any taxi, scooter, or rickshawwala on principle. Otherwise, the journey is not complete." Suddenly, the rickshawwala ended the argument with, "When next your father farts, push that 2 rupee note up his arse," and left. Bhatia looked quite hurt. No driver of any public conveyance in India ever leaves without his money. Why is that rickshawwala trying to be different, the bastard? "I hope Sati's at home." He was, and looked genuinely pleased to see them. "All 3 of us are a little drunk, I think," said Agastya. "We thought we should get a little more drunk and stooge a dinner off you." In the corridor behind Sati stood a haggard woman with large, slightly bulging eyes. "My sister-in-law, Geeti, Bobby. These are 2 young misfits from the collectorate and the divisional forest office." She seemed nice. "We're just sitting down to dinner, but perhaps you'd want yours a little later." On top of the books on Sati's bed lay an English translation of the Bhagavad Gita. The easel showed a new, unfinished sketch, an easily recognizable Krishna on a battlefield at Kurukshetra, but a fat, bald politician in Arjun's place, scratching his head, his face creased with incomprehension. "This one is the first of a series," smiled Sati, taking out glasses from, for some reason, under the bed. "Really ambitious ones. We'll need more soda. Just a second." He went out. Bhatia picked up the book like an illiterate or like a pragmatic government servant who disliked any printed word that did not further his career in any form, just because his hands were fidgety and the book was close by. The book could just as well have been a cricket ball or Rubik's Cube. Sati noticed it too. "That's not for Philistines," he said from the door with a uniformed waiter behind him. Bhatia flipped through the pages like one shuffles cards and put the book down. Tremendous fun of jokes, this book, said Sati, evacuating a chair. A real feast. He was again blasphemous as though people expected him to be so. But I see you don't believe me. He settled down. Have you ever read this? Certainly not, said Agastya. The question wasn't even intended for Bhatia. Sati got up solemnly, took 2 steps, picked up the book and put it in Agastya's lap. Read this. We are not discussing this until you read this. I'm quite shocked, I can tell you. You are also very drunk. I can expect Bhatia not to have read this, because he's a Punjabi or an American born in Delhi. I doubt if there exists a translation of this in Punjabi, and anyway, he doesn't read. Sati turned a little. You can see from his face that he doesn't read. But you, he walked over to assume, and against the mantelpiece, pose against his easel, are a Bengali, the son of a governor and an obscure Goanese Christian. Yes, the news has spread all over Madna, and no doubt, in keeping with your race, your father did to your poor mother what all of you did to Assam. But we only began to whine when the British did it to us. Sati pitched his voice high in mimicry. You're making us incapable of appreciating ourselves. I mean, who cares? He laughed with his body. And so, ignoring one half of yourself, you've grown up only a Bengali, Dhoti, Rashoglas, and Tagore. He laughed again, almost toppling the easel. Perhaps you haven't read the Gita, because the Bengalis haven't yet been able to prove that it was written by one of them. Stop talking shit and get us some kebabs, said Bhatia. Thus, through happenstance, Agastya could place the Bhagavad Gita beside Marcus Aurelius on his shelf. Pultukaku, he knew, would have been displeased. It is not written by Racine, you know, that you have to read it in English. Agastya had always associated books like the Gita with age, when the afterlife begins to look important, and particularly with one Orthodox uncle who read old Hindu scriptures every day, still loathed his father for having married a Christian and for having become governor of Bengal, bemoaned the decay of Calcutta and the exodus of the English. Pultakaku disliked him, that senile, confused Anglophile. Calcutta was pretty because people were prevented from moving around freely. Even Elliot Road would look clean if you removed the people from it. Is a city meant for people or for the Hardinge and his gang? And felt that the world would be at peace if everyone became a Hindu intellectual. Most passages were abstruse, but Agastya was surprised by some. The mind is restless, Krishna impetuous, self-willed, hard to train. To master the mind seems as difficult as to master the mighty winds. The mind is indeed restless. Arjuna, it is indeed hard to train, but by constant practice and by freedom from passions, the mind in truth can be trained.